So again, if you have just joined us, welcome to the Careers with STEM Maths and Data webinar. Happy Careers Week. We encourage you to start introducing yourself in the chat. It's fantastic to see so many people coming here today. STEM stands, of course, for science, technology, engineering and maths. Only 6 out of 10 students know that. If you are a teacher, we are delighted to be sharing some of the STEM careers with you from Careers with STEM. And particularly from maths and data, we have some passionate maths and data careers experts joining us today. And we know that today maths has never been more relevant to our world. From flattening the curve of the COVID pandemic to understanding bushfires and the weather, maths and data help us to make sense of the world and our place in it. There are a growing number of exciting careers working in maths and data, then they're not the boring jobs that you might have thought. This webinar is going to explore the wide range of careers in maths and data and how they connect with your passion, whether that's football, music, writing, or helping to create a better world. Just introduce myself and then I'd like to get some information from you because we're going to start a quick poll. But my name is Heather Catchpole. I am the founder of Careers with STEM and Refraction Media, a STEM content company. I love storytelling. I love Asian food and dogs. You may see dogs in the background of this webinar. I know we're all working from home, so it's been an interesting challenge for me. I've been working in science media for about 20 years, and I've reported on science stories from everywhere from live volcanoes and fossil digs to nuclear reactors. I've worked with Google and Facebook and Pixar to produce virtual reality experiences, videos and websites, and I've trained as a geologist. In 2014, my business partner and I founded Careers with STEM Hub, which includes a quarterly magazine, posters, videos, events, webinars, teacher professional development, quizzes, and a website to help young people discover the careers of the future. So each year we deliver 4 magazines across each of the STEM disciplines, plus special editions like economics, data science, and cybersecurity. So our values at Career with STEM is that everybody should have equal access to build a better future. And a lot of people aren't seeing the kind of, seeing themselves in the kind of career stereotypes that are out there. And yet STEM jobs are growing 1.5 times faster than other jobs, while STEM enrolments are growing much, much more slowly. So particularly in these challenging times, we need to share what those jobs of the future really are and help young people to train up quickly into different career areas. Now, I'm just going to pop out of this so that I can share with you and find out a little bit more about some of you that are here today. And I'd love for you just to have a quick vote on the poll that's popped up on the screen there, and to see what you think about maths. I know many of you have probably heard, I will never use this in my life. I certainly hear my own 12-year-old son saying that. He's probably going to be saying that this afternoon as we hop into some algebra. It's always the most challenging area. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you think about maths for a start, and also what you think about some of the careers that need maths. Please feel free to tick a couple of options and we can share those results once everybody has voted. I'm excited to see that, in fact, nobody does think maths is boring here. Are you all sure you've all forgotten your high school maths? So if you just finish, just waiting for those last votes to come in now. Fantastic. So I'll just end that poll and you should see the results on the screen. So yes, it's hard, it's fun, it's fantastic to see that many people think that it's fascinating, and certainly great to see that many people are not sure. I'm constantly surprised at some of the different ways people use maths. Certainly finance is one of those jobs that's really obvious that maths is used in, but it's really great to see that so many people are aware of all of the other options in trades being the second most popular there, which is fantastic, sports and hospitals, science, of course, and a few of you saying also things like law and community service. So I'll stop sharing that, and then we'll just go back into the webinar and we can take a look at some of the things that we were sharing this issue and what we've discovered in careers with maths. So where do we find maths and data careers? Well, one of the most familiar refrains, as I say, is when am I ever going to use this? So we're going to look at where people use maths in their career across all of these different industry sectors: health, climate, disaster management, sports, trade, and even fashion, to look at some emerging career areas that rely heavily on maths and data skills. So the COVID-19 pandemic has obviously turned all of our worlds upside down. It's been a very weird year, but it's also a reminder that maths is everywhere. And I was fascinated to see so many people jumping onto really understanding what it means when diseases spread and grow. So this issue, we looked at 3 ways that maths has helped in the coronavirus pandemic, including what it means to flatten the curve, understanding exponentials, and R0. So R0 is a mathematical term that stands for the basic reproduction rate. R0 is the average rate at which infectious diseases like COVID-19 spreads between people. And getting the rate below 1 is really essential because it means that the cases don't continue to grow exponentially, accelerating, so that our health system becomes quickly overwhelmed. So one of the Careers with STEM people that we talked to today is Jane Shrapnel, and she's the principal data scientist at the Sydney Children's Hospital. When patients present to emergency department, it's the doctors and nurses' jobs to look at their symptoms and figure out what's wrong and help them. But without experts like Jane, they wouldn't be able to understand those bigger growing trends on looking at how data can be used to improve patient care and outcomes. One of the projects that Jane is working on is using the data that's available in hospitals, mostly recorded from previous patients, to figure out what patients look like when they have something called sepsis, which is an infection which can quickly become life-threatening and can be very hard to find as patients first present to triage. So Jane actually did a Bachelor of Arts and worked in psychology and international relations at Deakin University in Victoria. And then she soon realised that she wasn't keen on becoming a psychologist, but she liked the statistics and human rights parts of the study. So she combined those as part of her Masters in Statistics Research into reducing mortality rate of children aged under 5 in Africa. And data literacy skills were really, really, really relevant to that job and are now relevant, she says, to every part of the Sydney Children's Hospital. We're going to hear from Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Shuttle and I'm a data scientist at the Sydney Children's Hospital Network. For me, maths is a way to solve important problems, such as understanding the impact and spread of COVID within New South Wales. You can read more about me and my career in the latest issue of Careers with STEM. Thanks.
So while COVID-19 was the worst natural disaster the world experienced in 2020, for Australians, it was preceded by one of our worst natural disasters we'd had up until that time. So of course, the national bushfire emergency brought on by the effects of drought and climate change was one of our challenges right at the beginning of the year. And Rachel Bessel and Adam Morgan are 2 of the people who have careers in maths and data that are making a difference to understanding and mitigating the effects of climate change. Rachel always loved maths and science at school, and she did a Bachelor of Science with honours at the Australian National University in Canberra. She was at uni in 2003 when the Canberra bushfires happened and caused the city's worst natural disaster in history. This experience inspired her to focus her honours research on bushfire weather, which led to a career in bushfire research and disaster management. Now, as well as working at the research level, she's in her role as a senior researcher for the Country Fire Authority in Victoria. It's now her job to improve our understanding of how bushfires behaves, and she might be actually at the front line on extreme weather days, working in the State Control Centre as a fire behaviour analyst, helping emergency services predict in real time the spread of fires at that local level. Rachel is also able to make these predictions not only by drawing on real-time weather and climate data, but on the data and findings that's been generated from her research, which she conducts in between emergencies. Here's Rachel in her own words.
Hello, my name is Rachel Bessel and I'm a senior researcher with the Country Fire Authority in Victoria. One interesting fact about my job is I get to test the accuracy of fire behaviour models by working with real wildfires. Maths is so important as it underpins these fire behaviour models, which look at different combinations of temperature, relative humidity, wind speed and fuel state to determine how a fire will spread if one is to start. You can read more about my career in this month's issue of Careers with STEM.
So Adam Morgan was our cover star this issue, and he also had a circuitous route into a maths and data career, combining a Bachelor of Arts majoring in Japanese and German with a Bachelor of Science majoring in maths and physics at Monash University. He says that his light bulb moment for choosing meteorology as a career became when he took a 6-week internship at the Bureau of Meteorology during his 3rd year of uni. One day, a bomb researcher was describing a particular weather phenomena and writing down the equations, and he realised finally that those equations were exactly what he was learning at university. It was the first time that he'd felt that what he was studying in maths and physics was directly applicable to the things that he could see and feel every day. Following an additional honours year at Monash, Adam completed a 12-month graduate diploma of meteorology at the BOM, and he's now the manager of the Extreme Weather Desk. So in this role, Adam leads a team of meteorologists that support state and territory weather forecasters in providing forecasts and warnings for severe and extreme weather, such as cyclones, floods, and dangerous fire conditions. There's also a communications aspect to his role, which means he might spot Adam on TV or on a Twitter video when there's an extreme weather event going on.
Hi, I'm Dr. Adam Morgan from the Bureau of Meteorology. I work in the Extreme Weather Desk team where we look at severe weather right across the country, just like this nasty cold front crossing the southeast of Australia right now. What I love most about maths is how it explains and brings to life all of the science that we can see and touch and feel every day, just like weather. You can read more about me and my career in the latest issue of Careers with STEM.
Maths and data are also used extensively in sports. When she's not being a rowing champ, Kshira Saagar works as a data analyst for the Australian Institute of Sport's National Athlete Management System. In between stints representing Australia in rowing, including a bronze medal at the 2019 World Rowing Cup, Kshira completed a degree in science and economics with a maths major and an applied statistics minor at the Australian National University in Canberra. Her role is mainly about giving athletes usable data to improve their performance standards. And since the program launched, the data has grown exponentially, and they've now recorded more than 1.5 million training sessions covering 42 sports. The big challenge, and where Kshira and her colleagues are using their STEM skills the most, is what they do with this massive data. For example, runners might need pace information while rowers might need distance stats. So her team works out what data is available and how they can get that data into formats that people can use to improve their training. So it was fantastic to see that so many of you understand how important maths are to trades. Trades are often associated with tools, trucks, and loads of physical labour, but there's a stack of basic maths involved in almost every type of maintenance, repair, and construction role. From calculating quantities and determining floor space ratios to ordering materials, converting measurements, most tradespeople rely on advanced knowledge of numbers, something that sticking with high school maths can seriously help to solidify. So algebra, trigonometry, basic area skills are just as important to a successful tradies toolkit as a fancy drill is. So apart from the basic stuff, addition, subtraction, multiplication and division, electricians regularly use fractions, percentages and decimals when working out things like room dimensions, wiring lengths, watt to kilowatt conversions and load calculations. Builders are basically mathematicians that make stuff. That's how much adding, subtracting, dividing, and multiplying is happening in their average day. Figuring out how much mixture is needed for a pour might seem like a simple multiplication, but For a concreter, there's some seriously complex area and volume formulas that go into each and every job and can call from some pretty advanced geometry. We wanted to find a tradie who was excellent at communicating why maths was important in his particular job. So we talked to the hashtag instafamous, yes, that's a term, John Costa, who is on Instagram as Life of a Maintenance Plumber and has over 37,000 followers.
Hey guys, it's John from Life of Maintenance Plumber here in Melbourne. I wasn't a big fan of maths, to be honest, when I was in high school, but I didn't think I was going to use it either when I left. But being a plumber, we do some basic maths every single day, work out our volumes, falls, quantity of stuff that we need. But you can learn more about my career in the latest edition of Careers with STEM. Keep tuned.
So from basic maths to data science, we know that data science is one of the fastest growing industries, and linking data with fashion is one of those things that can help people into a career they might not have much clarity about. So this issue, we talked to a data scientist who worked for the fashion brand The Iconic, and he mentored student Lucy Mace from Quakers Hill and answered her career questions about data science. And we're going to hear from Kshira Saagar next. There are currently 2.7 million jobs in data science, and it's estimated that less than 60% of those jobs are being filled. Today, data scientists can take home fantastic salaries of up to 130K per year. And there's not just data science, you can work as analysts, engineers, and many other areas. So we're really fortunate to have Kshira with us today to take us through what data science involves in person. I'm absolutely delighted to ask Kshira to hop on and answer some questions with us today. So welcome, Shiras, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Heather. It's really good to be here.
So Kshira, you were one of those kids that did like science and liked maths. What was it that kind of sparked you into maths in the first place?
So it goes back to high school. So we had two really amazing teachers in high school. So one was my math teacher, who saw that we were really bored trying to learn math, be it calculus, differential calculus, integral calculus, and the like. And then he said, okay, let me make this very interesting for you. And he would show us a real world example and how you could physically look at it. He would tell us stories about how to appreciate distribution. So when we're learning about Poisson distribution, he would tell us a story about how, say, the Battle of Britain was solved using a Poisson distribution. He would tell us if you're driving in a traffic lane, every single queue is a Poisson process. We've all learned that in math. But if you're in a queue and if you're in a Poisson process, you always know that one queue always seems to move faster than the other queue, which happens when you stand at the burger stand or when you're in a traffic queue. And so you typically tend to jump queues or jump lanes. And so he taught us mathematically how not to jump lanes and stick to your queue and stick to your lane and mathematically prove that it makes sense. So simple stuff like that made us really take an interest in math. And every single new concept that he brought on, fractals or a higher order differential calculus, everything would have an approach to how it translated into the real world. And he kept drilling into us that calculus is the language of gods. And that's what he could tell us. And now there are books that are being written that says calculus is the language of gods, a book called Infinite Calculus. So that brought us a big interest in math. And similarly in physics too, our physics high school teacher was somebody who would really say and so he would just try to explain how science and religion and everything else is very metaphysical rather than physical, right? So it'd not just be Van de Graaff generator, electricity, blah, 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 but it'd be like, okay, how do you take this to the next step? How do you see physics in your real life? And he would explain to us the concept of infinity, right? And so if you have time, I can explain the concept of infinity or randomness here. So when somebody asks you how big is infinity, we wouldn't think of a big number. But the way he explained to us is, if you are a mom and your son is going away to school, when he turns the corner, you cannot see him anymore. So he's infinitely away from you. So that distance of one street is infinity. Or if your son's grown up and gone to a different country, you can't see him anymore and still infinity. So infinity is very relative. And so he tries to explain the concepts in ways that we can understand as high school students. And that drove us, or at least me, to go take a career interest in making math and physics and science as my career.
That's fantastic. Those real world examples just really do bring it home, I think, to kids, just exactly how relevant things are. And I love what you say about maths being really the language of how we understand the world. And I like those real world examples. I'm never going to queue again without thinking, don't change lanes. It's mathematically proven. You should just sit here and wait in that slowest lane. So it's fantastic to hear those examples of how that work. So Kshira, I know you're particularly good at helping us to really understand data science as well. So what is it that data scientists really do? It's a really hot topic area. Can you explain a little bit more about what data science really is?
Sure. So the way I like to think about it is we do three things with data. So it's almost like trying to use the raw material called data and finally make decisions with it. So that's what I tell anyone what data science is all about, is we help people make smarter decisions. People always, every day in the morning, we wake up and make decisions, be it what do I wear for this interview, where do I wear for this meeting, what do I eat today, who do I go out with? And so we make decisions every day. But if we had better data, we would make smarter decisions, and that's what we do in a retail setup or in a corporate setup. So there are three parts to what we do with data or data science. The first part is called what we call data engineering, which is pretty much getting data from one place and cleaning it up, putting it in a standardized place in a standardized format that everyone can use. The second part is applying intelligence on that data at scale, which means trying to write an algorithm or trying to write a smarter piece of pseudocode or trying to write a part of piece of code on it to derive insights out of it, which is what we call data science. And then the third part is the most important part, which is you've taken data from one place, put it in one place. We call it data engineering. We apply intelligence at scale. It's called data science. But then the third part is the most important part, which is data translation, which is how do we translate all this math and stats and numbers into English or whatever language it is to make business decisions. So the executives or the senior leaders at my company can make a decision. How do we do that? And that's the third part, that's data translation. So there are three kind of job roles we do in a data setup: data engineering, data science, and data translation. So that's what we do within a data setup.
Fantastic. Now, Kshira, you actually work for the Global Fashion Group as a data scientist.
That's right.
Previously, we're working for The Iconic, which is one of the brands that the Global Fashion Group look after. So right. I guess people normally think, that when you're working in fashion and data, you're probably trying to sell people more jumpers, but it's much, much more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's typically the first thing that people think about is, are you probably making people buy more clothes? That's the, sometimes people make that known mission, but there are three things we do. At least I can talk to what we do at The Iconic and typically other e-commerce ventures, right? And so you can take this and apply that to Amazon. You can take and apply this to any other retailer. And these are the three kinds of data related jobs that we do in these companies. The first one is customer focused, which is anything that a customer might come and see on site. So if she comes to the site and she wants to buy something, how do I make her experience much more easier? So we have an algorithm that will help you buy something without having to search by typing, but by taking a photo of a dress that I'm wearing or a photo of something that somebody's wearing. And then it will immediately visually search for that. So it's an algorithm that does that. Or it can complete the entire outfit. So if I buy a jumper like this, it would say, also buy this shoes and buy this something else that goes very well with it. So think of it as a shopkeeper, but on the digital front that can digitally tell you what to buy. So algorithms like that make a customer experience better is one part of one job that we do. The second thing that we do is on the marketing front, which is obviously a lot of marketing needs to happen on how to spend money in different channels, in different medium, how to reach out to a customer, how many emails should I send a particular customer, how much money should I spend on paid search and marketing and stuff like that. So when this is in millions and millions of dollars, how do you make sure that you spend this money the right way, on the right things, on the right customers? So that's something that we help our marketing teams with, from understanding channel effectiveness, understanding which customers to go after, understanding when to talk to them and when not to talk to them and stuff like that. How do you not turn someone off? So those are things that we do. But the third and the biggest piece of thing that is typically hidden and people don't see in retail companies, be it fashion, be it Amazon, be it anybody else, is the operations and logistics part of it. So a lot of work at The Iconic and Global Fashion Group goes into two kinds of logistics operation. One is buying, which is what brands do we buy? How much of it should we buy? How many large and medium and small should we buy? What colors should we buy? What trend patterns should we buy? And these are all things that people are asking all the time. So we use data science to answer these questions. We call it merchandising or buying. And the other one that we do is in the warehouses, we tell people, how do you pick an item and pack an item and dispatch an item in the most efficient fashion? So think about a human being picking an item in a warehouse in a zigzag fashion. we write an algorithm that tells somebody how to pick it in the most optimal fashion without having to think too much about it and save a lot of time walking in the warehouse. How do you dispatch it faster? How do you make sure the delivery happens seamlessly? So a lot of logistics and operations related work happens too. So there are three kinds of things that we do. Like I said, customer related work to make the customer's lives and shopping experience better, marketing related effort to make sure we spend the marketing money the right way, and logistics and operation related efforts to make sure that we're spending money the right way, that we are operating very, very efficiently.
Thanks, Shira. So I guess data scientists could work across many, many different sectors. What are a few of those examples? What are a few different industry sectors where data scientists,
Sure.
engineers and analysts might find some work?
I've in my previous career, I used to work for a consulting company, so I can give you examples of different places I've worked in. So one was retail that I spoke about. The other one is in airspace and aeronautical. So what we've done is I've worked for Delta Airlines, where in their main airport, we tell them which gate should the airplane land down at and which connecting gate should happen, so that the distance between one connecting gate and the other connecting gate for the set of passengers and the crew is the least, and it takes the least amount of refueling needed. So all that operations in terms of where the flight should land and where should it connect. So that's a area people use data science in. We've used data science, believe it or not, in gambling and entertainment. So we've done work for Caesars before, where you can tell what is the most difficult combination of blackjack to come up with that the house always wins. So that they use a lot of data science, trust me or not. And the CEO of Caesars is a data scientist himself. And the other place that we use data more often than not is in government services and welfare. So in our pro bono effort, we also help the NSW department and other departments where we try to understand which local government areas have the highest chance of domestic violence. What are the factors that drive domestic violence? How can we solve this problem? Where do accidents happen the most, and how can we solve them? So government services and other areas, one more example I can think of. And obviously all the big, you can think of Facebook, you can think of Google, Microsoft, Netflix, anybody you pick, all the big companies, all of them use data science at the background to make sure that they deliver the right content to the right people at the right time in the right format. So those are other examples where data science is used.
Fantastic. You can see why it is such a growing area. I'm sure all of us have been, using the internet and watching Netflix and, shopping online. And it's terrific to hear those social good examples as well. I think that's really interesting. I'd love to, just to finally hear from you, Kshira, about your own path into data science. So what did you study, and how did you kind of take those first steps to get into that?
Sure. So out of school, high school, I went into uni, picked up electronics and communication engineering, major in stats, math, and computer science. So stats and computer science were my two majors. And once I graduated out of university, I landed a job, thankfully. I just call it being at the right place at the right time, in a company that worked on data science as a service. So we would go into a company, like I said, the examples I gave, solve a data science problem for them, and then come out. And one thing I tell people who typically try to take the data science path is, yes, doing a higher degree, doing more courses is really good, but nothing teaches you data science and solving problems at scale by actually then solving problems themselves. So if you've not done them before, if you've not solved problems in your real lives, if you've not solved problems as an intern, or you've not solved problems for a real company, it's quite hard to just read about them and do them. And so the best data scientists I've worked with are people who've just been pushed to the end, have solved a problem, picked up skills on the way, and then done all of these things. A lot of things that I've learned and I use today were things that I learned during the middle of my career. So I was on a particular career path. I had learned a few things, and then midway through my career, someone said, "Oh, maybe all of these tools are no longer relevant. You have to learn R and Python now." And so that was like in the middle of my career. I could have said, "No, I don't want to do that." So I had to learn R and Python, and then now I'm in a totally different career path, even within the same data science space. So it's a constantly evolving space. And so a prerequisite is not knowing something already, but being willing to learn and unlearn things really fast, and learning something new, whatever stage of the career you're in. And that's where I am today.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Kshira, just sharing that insight. And I know people talk about how STEM skills are important. So obviously problem solving is one of those skills that are really important, STEM skills, and communication as well as another of those skills which go alongside those foundational STEM skills. And I also really love what you said about that lifelong learning. I think it's really critical for all of us to kind of keep thinking about how the experience that we've got in one job can be applied in a different area as well. We're just going to talk now about And if you do have some questions for Kshira, please do pop that. You should see a Q&A function down the bottom of the webinar there. So do please pop in your questions for Kshira there, and we will be answering some questions as we go through the next part of the webinar. But I did just want to move now into looking at where do we go from here, because of course, while data scientist is the growing job today, 5 years ago we weren't really training our kids in data science. And the same thing is certainly going to happen. We know that most of the kids who are studying today are going to go into careers that we don't really even know what they are yet. So one of the things that we love to do is to really think about, and this is a terrific exercise you can actually do with your own students if you're talking to them about careers. Have a look at the kind of future jobs that we've come up with here. See if you can get your kids to, future think some of the jobs that they're doing. How could they become a Minecraft, server operator? What interests them, and just see, well, how do you think you could combine those STEM skills with that job? So a lot of kids are still talking about going into jobs like, car mechanics and working as a chef. Absolutely, those jobs will be around, but maybe you'll be working as a chef who works with, 3D printed materials. Perhaps you'll be a mechanic who's working on self-driving cars and using your data science skills to understand where the cars are going and how they operate. If we're working in artificial intelligence, how do we train artificial intelligence to be the most ethical it possibly can be and come up with those ethical decisions? Are we going to be using augmented reality or AR to build our journeys and understand our journeys as we particularly plan out our travel, post-COVID? So what are those kind of future career areas? And I think that's one of the great ways to inspire kids and get them thinking about the fact that, as we've seen, STEM skills are relevant to all of these different areas. You can get employment in many, many, many different sectors, and they're super relevant to the things that you love as well. So getting that across to kids, I think, is really, really critical. If you're looking for some inspiration, the Careers with STEM website has 300 profiles of people working in STEM careers. We're really passionate about showing different diversity in there, so you can search through that people tab for Indigenous people working in STEM, for women working in STEM. You can search through different STEM areas such as the science, technology and engineering and maths careers. You can also search by things like social good and building healthy communities, and finding those things that really inspire kids into that next area. We call that their X, where X is what they want to do. It might be another field, it might be something that they're passionate about, and looking at how they can combine that STEM interest with those areas. So do look for that on the careerswithstem.com website. And you can also find all of our magazines for free online. You can read them as flip-through editions, and you can also order copies of all of the STEM back issues and our special deep dive editions as well. You will generally find them in your school library or at the principal's office when you do go back to school. At the moment, everything is available digitally, and you can also order those back copies as well. So we'd love to hear some more for you and what you've interested in. So I'll open up the chat now and the Q&A while we have Kshira as well. And we'd love to chat with you. And also, I'd love to just run one more poll here to see what was it that most interested you about today's session. So as we're having a chat, please do fill in that poll, and we'd love to hear back and get your feedback about what we can do to help bring these STEM careers more into your schools, into your homes. Get feedback on what's working with your kids, whether they are the 4 out of 10 who don't know what the E in STEM stands for, or what's really working for them. So I will pop into the Q&A now. And Kshira, I'd love to just start with you and ask you, apart from maths, what other subjects or skills are important for data scientists?
So 2 other areas that I would probably highlight. One is computer science, being able to program and write everything in a form of a programming language is really helpful if you're going to be in the data science space. It doesn't have to be any particular programming language. It could be any programming language as long as the constructs and the approach are there. And that inherently has the other the second requirement, which is a lot of logical approach to it and a lot of common sense in solving a problem. Because programming is a lot of logic and common sense, and solving a business problem also needs a lot of logic and common sense. I think with those three, you pretty much have everything that you would need to solve a problem. Being able to write a program, being able to appreciate the math behind it, and being able to logically solve the problem will give you the necessary skills that's needed to be a data scientist.
There's a bunch of questions coming in through chat and Q&A, which is fantastic. Do pop them in the Q&A if you can. I did want to answer one from the chat though, because I think this is a really great question from Hatis Dogan. Hopefully I've got that right, Hatis. She asked what advice you would have for those students who are not as interested in maths. And I know that you were very fortunate to grab a great teacher. We know that kids are 40% most influenced by their teachers and 40% most influenced by their parents in their career choices. I was really lucky to have parents who were mathematicians, and so they could kind of share those spark moments. But for the kids who just, don't love it, what's your advice? One of the things I would say is you don't have to be good at maths. But Kshira, I'd love to hear what you say about that.
And like I said, there are three job roles within data, right? There is a data engineer, there's a data scientist, and there's a data translator. And like everyone needs a good communicator. I've worked with really good data scientists who are really good with math and science and with writing program, but they can't for their life of it explain how the algorithm works to someone, or they can't explain to a business why they should make a decision. So we need complementary skill set even within the data science space, where somebody can come in, understand. You don't have to completely know the math behind it. You don't have to be a statistician. If you can understand it and then talk to the business and explain to them, this is what it's trying to say and this is what it means. I think a lot of data translators are needed in this day and age. And that is a really good spot to fill for the creative types, for the people who, I saw another question where it said, what about the creative types? What about people who can visualize things and explain things to people much better? What about people who don't want to be in maths? The data translation is a really good space and a really respected space in businesses. That's what they call as strategy divisions, and that's what they call them as growth divisions and growth departments. So you would go to any of these companies which have growth departments and strategy departments. These are pretty much data translators who can take the output and then explain that to a business.
Fantastic. And another question that's come through from Ian Palmer is about creative types in STEM, which is something, again, that's completely passionate for me, because I've always been a creative person, yet I've worked in STEM. And he says, do you see that there's careers for creative types, for example, to help bring data visualizations to life?
Definitely, right? And so the third part of the data translation role has what we call in the real world as BI experts, which is business intelligence experts. We call them as data and insights experts and stuff, things like that. These are roles where you need to be able to visualize the output, visualize the data, or even be able to just slice and dice it and show it to a final end user. And there's definitely a lot of demand in businesses, at least at the senior most executive levels. They don't want algorithms to tell them. They just want reports and dashboards to tell them how the business is running, and tell them in a way where they can look at it in 30 seconds and understand what's happening. And so that BI roles, business intelligence roles, are definitely the space for people who are creative and can express data in a much more visualized fashion.
Fantastic. And finally, Karen Taylor Brown asks, this is a great question, how do students gain work experience in data science? Do you know of anything that's available?
So a lot of companies do internships. Even the Iconic used to do internships. We did paid internships. We typically work with end of year uni graduates. Sometimes we've even worked with employees on high school students because they're employees, so they want to bring them in on a summer break. So we give them an actual problem to solve. But if you don't have the opportunity to come and do an internship, we do have a lot of problems that I can share. And there are communities and data scientist communities which can share real problems with fake data sets, and you can try solving them and putting them in your GitHub repositories. The one thing that we look for when we interview for a data science candidate is we look at what you call portfolio in other areas of work. We call it GitHub repositories. We look at your GitHub repository. We see what kind of problems you solve, how do you write code. Those are things that we typically look for when you get your first job. And that would be a really good place. There are so many publicly available data sets on Kaggle, on Google, even companies like us open data sets. And that's a good place to get your experience and cut your teeth on.
Fantastic. And I know a couple of people in the chat have suggested that we actually share more of your tips and hints into getting in data science and maybe produce a video. We are recording this session, so we will have this, and we encourage you to share this with your schools and students via the Careers with STEM YouTube, but we'll certainly love to work with Kshira on getting more of these hints and tips about how you can get data science out there. We do also have some resources on Careers with STEM. You will find worksheets and other materials that can help you to use these kind of stories, connect them with real world data, connect them with real world examples, get kids actually doing as a part of that STEM learning as well. And again, yeah, really look forward to sharing this further with you. One of the great ways to keep up with us is just through our Facebook channel, and you'll find many other STEM professionals on here. Again, we'd love to get your feedback. We will be sending through a short survey. We'll send through a link to this recording as well. And we'd like to, virtually, please join me in thanking Shiras Story so much for spending his valuable time talking to all of us about what he does in his career. So thanks, Kshira.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a good time.
Fantastic. And that's all for this webinar. Thanks so much for sharing your results there. It was great to see what was working and what wasn't working on this. As I said, we will send you through those links online, and please do continue sharing that information. Keep up with us on careerswithstem.com. We'll see you on Facebook, and we look forward to running more of these and answering more of these questions. Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.